to my channel. My name is Olivia. I'm a stay-at-home homeschool mom of 2 kiddos. One is a 3rd grader and one is in pre-K. I had shared a video in the past of the curriculums that we are going to be using this homeschool year, and I kind of wanted to just give an update / review of some of them for our homeschool parents start looking for curriculums for the next homeschool year starting in about March, April, May. There's just so much to look through. I know that this can kind of be a busy part of the year for looking into and researching different materials for the next homeschool year. So I wanted to kind of give an update on what I think about what we chose for this year and how it's going for our family. And hopefully you guys can find something that's a little bit helpful in here for you guys. I'm going to start off with the Cursive Handwriting, the Level 2 A Gentle Feasts handwriting booklet. I have seen this curriculum shared and spoken about, and it looks just beautiful and so full of options and intentional learning. It is a Charlotte Mason based curriculum. I am sorry to say I am not a fan of the handwriting. This is the only thing I've used from this company, so I am not saying that anything is wrong with the rest of their, I just don't like the font that they used. I like the premise where it shows you and you start out with the similar shaped letters at first, so you get the hang of all of the ones that curve first, that sort of thing, and you move on. So the letters that are supposed to hit the top line, the tall letters, some of them, this font shows that some of them hit the top line and some of them don't. I asked my son if I could show his work in here. And his handwriting looks good. This is the first year he's ever tried cursive. I'm not upset with that, but he is getting confused because like the D's don't touch the top line. It shows you that they don't. And so his whole, and I don't know how I missed this because he's already been through all of the lowercase letters and a lot of the words and studying the words, and he is now in the middle of the uppercase things and putting together phrases and stuff. I missed it. The D's only go halfway above the midline, and I don't know if that's actually accurate the way it's supposed to be, but it is very confusing for my son because then a lot of the tall letters end up not hitting the top line. Like this K is not hitting the top line. They also don't have T's hitting the top line in this cursive curriculum. I'm not a fan of that. I'm just not, because this says Mary had a little lamb, okay? The L's hit the top line, the T's don't. The D does not, the H does. Nothing is really hitting the top line in every of his handwriting, and everything is just kind of cruising right above the midline. And this lamb looks like an E, and that's not really his fault. This looks like 2 E's. These T's look like confused eyes, and this is not his fault. This is because he's literally copying this, and he's a little confused. So I don't like that. I love the phrases they use in here. I love the premise of how they teach, in what order, that sort of thing. I've since ordered a different handwriting booklet. I'm sad to say that I don't like this because I was really excited about this. I love the phrases, beautiful stuff. So we're not using that anymore. Next is Michael Clay Thompson. This is the Sentence Island book. This is what you would use after you've gone through Grammar Island. I love this. I think that it's really engaging, and the stories that they use to explain it, this is taught in a narrative style. So this is basically kind of like a story. It's a book and not really a book. So there's novels that come with it, but this is the text, and it comes in narrated format, and my son learns very well that way, and I teach really well that way. So that's good for us. It's been great for us, and it's extremely thorough in the explanation, and it's gentle, and it's not just like you're reading a text book or a booklet, a workbook, and then you fill in the blank. Like, what is this? This is a noun. What is this? This is a preposition. It uses it in, you learn through the example of their writing. They give more examples as it is. I'm going to give a more thorough, in-depth review of this and a walkthrough of a lesson and how we use it. That was requested for me, and I just need to try to figure out functionally how I would do it, because I really do just sit down next to my son. He reads some, I read some, that sort of thing. There are, especially when you get to the sentence island part, there are activities, writing activities to go along with each of the ideas of what you are building upon. There's a practice booklet with practice sentences in it that you go over, that you start after reading Grammar Island. While you're going through this, we are also using the vocabulary. I had bought Music of the Hemisphere, which was supposed to be poetry. I don't think we're going to get into it. I don't think we're going to get into it, and I don't think I'm going to use it. That seems maybe like a more difficult thing to teach that way, in the narrated way. And we get so much exposure to poetry through just the different things that I have going on that I don't know if I'm going to put that on our plate. Maybe if we have a lull in some of our core things and I feel like it's okay to add something else in. But as far as the grammar and the writing part of it, the vocabulary part, I really enjoy this. So I'm going to do a better review, but I just have to say I really like the narrative learning format. And the only thing is it's kind of difficult and tricky to like find your rhythm, because it's not, there isn't a lesson plan where it's read pages this through this and then finish this worksheet, or read this chapter and then do this activity. It's kind of, you have to kind of piece it together on your own. And so it's teacher intensive in that way, where you're going to have to figure out how much of this is he going to be able to absorb, and then how do I reinforce it. And that's kind of something you have to get a hang of with your own learners. All right, for geography, I shared that we were using Memoria Press's states and capitals. I like this. I like this, and it is fun and it is engaging, and this book is so cute and sweet and a really fun way for the kiddos to learn about the different states. It's just not a priority for us. This, I don't want to say it's busy work, because I still think it's important to know geography. I'm just saying it's not a priority, and we pull it out when it's a slow day for our like core curriculums. We don't have a lot of math going on. We don't have a lot of reading going on. It's like we've done things and then we can fit in a little bit more without I'm not one of those. I do not subscribe to the more is better camp. I'm not one of those people who feel put out if I don't fit in all the things and do all the things. I used to be when I started. It's a good way to memorize it the way they have it set up. And so I like that. It's just not a huge priority for us. Okay, next is history, and I didn't bring a book over. I am definitely impressed and happy with this selection, and we will use it next year. So I did take some notes there in front of me. So if you see me looking down, I probably should have said that in the beginning of the video. I do really like this, and I love the learning format. They're taught in units, and each unit has 3 lessons in it, and then there's kind of like a review situation. First of all, what I like is the age-appropriate quantity of information they put in here. I don't feel like they shove things down your throat, facts, numbers, dates. I mean, there are those things, but there's only so much retention, and I think they say that this is 1st through 4th grade. There's only so much retention of something like that for an average student, an average learner of that age. And there are some analysis questions at the end of each lesson, like just a few. And I like that too, because it reinforces the main ideas of what you went through, not date stuff. Like, what was the date that this happened? Or it might say, what was something that was really important that happened this date in 1776? Lots of stuff happened that year. But for that chapter, Anyway, so here's an example. You start out with a unit. This unit teaches about the Oregon Trail, a bit of the Mexican War, and like gold mining. So there's lots of pictures, which I like the way that my son does. He is able to look through text and understand what he's reading and retain stuff. It's not his preferred way, but he can do it. And so I like the amount of pictures. The text is large, which I also appreciate. And he can read this to himself. I'm not reading this aloud to him. So that's also great for me because I'm also teaching my daughter different things. So this is one of his independent things. And then I ask him the questions at the end because I have read the chapter. I ask him the questions at the end. I go in with him at it. So there's questions at the end. Just a couple review questions. There's always, we don't do the rhythm and rhymes. That's kind of like these fun poems and songs that go along with each lesson. Would my son love that? Yeah, but I just never pull it out because I forget about it. But it would be fun. There is a student workbook you can do. A lot of times it'll ask you to identify something on the map. Again, a lot of stuff happened back then on the East Coast. And so there's a map in the back, and it's another good way to reinstill geography. And then there are some hands-on things you can do, like build this, build that. That is not something that we can do, but you can fit in or not choose to do whatever, like the amount of work that you think you need to. This is a Christ-centered curriculum. It's biblical. There is some verses at the end of each chapter. Some of the review questions do ask things from a Christ-centered, a Christian-based point of view. Just letting you know. Outside of that, I'm happy with that. I wanted that. I just think it's really age appropriate. Like, you can't expect a student to be able to go super in depth and analyze and understand, the reasonings for people doing this and that at this age that deeply. So I like this and I'm excited for it. There are little art projects every once in a while. If you are an artsy craftsy family, my kids would probably enjoy that if I did it. I'm not, but every once in a while I give the option to. I do not like the student book. I don't use this a whole lot. A lot of it is either drawing or coloring pictures. We don't do those ones. I ask him when he's done with something, do you want to do that? You can. I do the review stuff, like who said what, who did this, where was this, and then you line things up. These are the things I like. If we're done with our stuff and he wants to color, he is more than welcome to go in here and color all the things. I mentioned that one way that my son learns really well is through reading and then discussions afterwards. So analysis through discussing and talking it out. One of my favorite curriculum inclusions this year has been the Memoria Press third grade American history discussion questions for supplemental reading set. This is also a faith-based company if you're not familiar with Memoria Press. What I love about this is that, first of all, what it is it's just a collection of books that they have suggested and then discussion questions to go along with each book. This is the one that we're on right now. And it's really just a question or two from each chapter to get to the heart of the questions. And it's like a living book, like you're living through history through these stories. I enjoy that there's a really big selection of both biographical and novel-based options. So the two different biographical books are the landmark books, and then these childhood of famous American books. I very much like this. These are a great jumping off point for biographies that are not boring because they're still written in a narrative style where it's kind of like a story, but it's not all fiction. Like, it's obviously... The reason I can say, like, it's kind of like a story is because they'll say, Daniel Boone said this or this to his dad. How do they know? Like, that can't be proved. You know what I mean? So it's in like a story-ish way, but it's a good example of getting into biography for kiddos. Not as happy with the landmark books. They're written in the same way. It's meant to be like, a diving board into biographies for kids. They're not going to write this for kids the same way they would write it for adults. And with the depth of questions and detail and vocabulary. It's just, we haven't read the George Washington one yet, but we have read the Christopher Columbus one and a couple others, and I just, I wasn't impressed. They're super quick books, like super quick. I mean, super quick. This is a really amazing way for us to learn. I also want to say the Notgrass, our Star Spangled Story company, they also have book suggestions. They go through them very slow. So if you wouldn't have to use both if you guys aren't super heavy literature-based learners. But they do, it'll say, you know, read Benjamin West and His Cat Grimalkin. And I think you do that for like 4 or 5 units. So that's several weeks. You could go really slow. We bought the literature books for both this and this, and we're going through them just fine the way it works out for us. I don't think it's too much, but we are heavy readers, so that's why it could work. But I'm not saying you need both of them, but I'm happy that I found this, and I have to say I'm going to be going this route next year. They also have a 4th grade pack. There are several novels and then several biographical type books that go along with the Memoria Press supplemental history set. So I wrote, it's age appropriate in terms of quantity, of detail, also in the analysis questions. These questions are not super deep, but they are easy to expand on if you need to, and they're a good sounding board for more discussion and more questions. Settlers back in these times did not have a fantastic way of looking at people that were different from them. The questions fall in line with, you know, why did he say that, or it'll use the same terms. You know, when Daniel said this about this group of people, that's a good way to jump off and be like, is this a term that we use for this group of people? Is this a term that we use for this culture? Was that, you know, what do we think about the way that Columbus treated these people? The book itself is not heavy. I am a big proponent of the parent, you know, filling in the blanks where it works for your family. I don't need to be spoon-fed from a curriculum. I don't agree with that in general. And so it's a good way I can customize that as well. Literature guides. I am loving doing the literature guides by just customizing and having the freedom to choose the books for my son, myself, and then buying a comprehension teacher literature guide to accompany that book. My only problem is he is an advanced reader, and I want to challenge him, which was why I went this way instead of getting one of the reasons I went this way instead of getting a whole literature language arts course. One of them is because he is advanced as far as his reading style goes, but then when you buy the language, like the literature guides or the comprehension guides, the teacher guides, the analysis questions are often very deep, and he is still only 9. And so, yes, I am able, as his parent and the one using this, to be able to re-ask the question in a way that I think can still be, it's still the same idea and getting to the same point, but it's age appropriate. It's just, okay, don't turn off the video. I'm going to mention the good and the beautiful. Don't turn off the video. Okay. I had never really looked into that company before. I had heard it, everyone used it. And again, I didn't really look into it because I'm not interested in a language arts course. Because I'm already using Michael Clay Thompson. But they do have like placement tests on there, and I kind of wanted to get an idea of where another company might say he's at, so I gave him the assessment test, and it said that he was 6th grade, which I thought was about, that was where I thought he was. And so I do want to get him books that are going to be enough of a challenge where he's getting something out of it. Because, I mean, that was one of the reasons I wasn't choosing 3rd or even 4th grade, like language arts courses. Another thing is because a lot of those courses come with grammar built into it, I would be only using half of the curriculum that I had spent money on because I'm using Clay Thompson MCT as our language arts course. And I mean, language arts and literature curriculums are expensive. And so I wanted to get my money's worth, and I wouldn't have been that way. And also, most of the packs, the book, I mean, not that you can't reread anything, but he's either read it on his own or it's been our read aloud or our discussion book or something like that, and he's read half of the books through there. And so I like being able to just pick and choose what I want him to be able to read when I feel like it's appropriate for him. I'm going to do another video on the different literature guides. I didn't pull any of them out, but there is a difference, a big difference between the companies and how they ask questions and the different activities that they have put in there, and there are good ones and there are not great ones. And so I'm going to be sharing that as soon as we're done. We've got one more full book to get through, or is it two, before the end of the school year. And so I will go into those when we are done with that. But I'm happy that I didn't just choose one company to get a bunch through, because wow, there's a big difference. We are doing Singapore again this year, the primary, is that what it is? Is that what it's called? Primary edition? Am I using primary or the US? I will make sure that I put the correct one that we're using down below, because there's several editions through Singapore. But I really love it. I love the mastery approach. Our first year that we got into homeschooling, I had used Saxon, which is a spiral approach. And when I was reading about them, the idea of a spiral approach seemed so much more logical. Like, yeah, you're going to touch on this, you move on, learn something new, move on, learn something new, you come back to it and reintroduce it. And it's like reintroducing it in a brain. It did not work for us. He got through it completely fine, and he never stumbled or had a night or whatever. And then the next year I had pulled out Singapore because I wanted to try something new, because Saxon had been the only thing we were exposed to from homeschooling math. And he was like, I don't know how to do that. I was like, buddy, are you sure? Like, here, I'll remind you. Remember, we do it like this. We learned it. And he's like, yeah, no, I don't remember. It did not retain well for us, the spiral approach. I really love the mastery approach of Singapore. You learn how to multiply, and you learn your multiplication tables. Then you use the same fact families multiplication to master division. And then you learn how to use like money and decimals and adding and multiplying and subtracting and dividing with decimals, because you've mastered how to do it before. This is the way it works for us. And I also love how there are options in the back of the Singapore books where they have more practice options for you. If you feel like it's been a while since we touched on that subject, let's pull out a multiplication sheet or what have you. I feel like so far the amount of lessons they give you before you move on to because there's lots of practice and reviews outside of the lesson. I just feel as if it's been enough for him to have mastered it at that point before moving on and going into the next unit, the next learning thing. So math, sticking with Singapore next year. All right, for science, we have been using Blossom and Root, their science curriculum, and Blossom and Root science just works for us. It does. I think there's something to be said about learning through books, both nonfiction and fictional, and videos, crafts, and labs, and not just retaining information through a textbook. And I do have to say, Christina does a lovely job of creating wonder about topics. The way she has it split up, you comprehend just enough, and you're left with like these tidbits of things that you remember. And I don't know for any of you, but I can't remember absolutely everything that I had to sit down and learn in my organic chemistry classes, or even my botany classes, or my anatomy and physiology classes. It's like those things root in your mind, and the tidbits that you're left with are things that it was because you learned it in an interesting way, you know? Oh yeah, mom, that's like from that book that we read with the seahorse or what have you, you know? Like, oh yeah, we read we learned about these videos and these trees in that video, you know? This is the third year we've done it. This last year going into this third grade year, I really deep dived and looked for a different science curriculum, and I could not find one that I thought was going to fit us as well. What it is, and she calls them wonder and not weak, and she does do that too, I think for the reason I said, but also because she, and I agree with it, like you don't need to feel like you're behind because you're on wonder 8 and it's supposed to be week 19 of the school year or whatever, because there are going to be topics that your kids are going to really love learning about and want to do another week or another few days or another 2 weeks and like take rabbit holes, and they just love that topic. And I just feel like that's what science should be about. It's not about trying to remember a whole textbook's work of, like you read a textbook and then there's a worksheet afterwards that you fill in about things that you read. I don't know how well other people retain information that way, but dang, to my kids, especially my son, just because he's older and he's been exposed to more, really knows a lot of things about a lot of things. And I think this is one of the reasons why. So she has a setup where you can either learn through a minimalist approach, which she has pulled out herself, the main big pictures for that wonder that you should know. And that could be it. If that's all you guys have time for science, these are like the main ideas of this topic. There's an accompanied student notebook, and it's something that I have my son fill out at the end of each one of the units. Just, it's like a blank picture space and some lines. And I just ask him to say, what do you remember from this week that interested you? And he just writes down what interested him. I'm not asking him to retain specific information. Just what is it that interests you about science? And then I have him draw a picture. If you want to go further, there's one if you're into books, which I do these a lot. I either go to the library online and I fill something out that I need in a couple weeks, and I try and find as many books as I can. Like I said, this is a mix of both fictional and non-fictional books in here. A lot of them at this age are still fictional books, and they're so fun, and it's such a fun way of learning about something. It's not that the facts aren't true, it's just the way that you're exposed to the information in a story format. There's also, for the visual learners, these are literally just YouTube links. And so every week at the beginning of the week, I go online and I make a science playlist, and I pull off these videos after I've watched them and I add them to the science playlist. And so when he's eating lunch one day, I put it on for both him and my preschooler, and they watch these videos and eat lunch. And he loves them, and so does my daughter so much. Also with the books, I also do a read aloud playlist on YouTube because sometimes I don't get to it because it's real life and I just forget to go online and try to find these at the library. And there are almost, I would say like 90% of these you can find as a read aloud on YouTube. So you don't have to buy these. You don't have to go to the library if you don't have access or you don't have time. Yeah, I love that. And then there are options also for labs, and these are crafts and different activities you could do that she has put together for you. We don't always get to those. It's not really a way that, I mean, it's a hands-on way of learning from a different point of view. So if you have a really kinesthetic learner, these could be worthwhile of your time if that is absolutely how your kid loves to retain information or enjoy learning about something. My son probably would appreciate it, but it's not something that really cements things for us. I do go through the lab packet every week to see if there's something that I would not feel overwhelmed teaching and I can fit it in that week. And there's some weeks that there are a couple things I could put out of there and we have a lot of fun with. And then there's other weeks where I'm like, yeah, we're skipping lab this week. So anyway, we'll probably be buying Blossom and Root Science from here on out for science. I love that. And my son learns really well through there. I had fun catching up with you guys and deep diving into these today. It had been I had just had a moment to really write down what I thought about each of them because I had started researching for next year. And I was like, I need to share this because hopefully if you guys do see these videos and, you know, you can check yes or no for checking these out yourself for your own students for this next year or this year, whatever point of the year you're watching the video. So I like to mix things up, especially because I don't I'm not just like a box curriculum teacher, at least for my learners where they're at right now. And so if you are also an eclectic picker, maybe you came across a curriculum that is new to you or you're interested in one of those, and this was a good explanation for you to make up your mind one way or another about them. So if you guys have any questions about anything that I mentioned or about one of the curriculums in specific, if I can clarify something for you down below, let me know. If you guys have any video requests for anything, let me know also. I would love to try to make something like that work. So anyway, thanks for checking me out and going through these with me today, and I will see you next time.